My name is Yash, and today in this video, I'm going to show you how to integrate ChatGPT inside React.js. So this is what output looks like. This application is created using OpenAI, DaisyUI, and React.js. To demonstrate, let me ask one or two questions. So this is how it will look like, and it is also responsive. To create this chatbot, you will require to sign up in OpenAI because we will be using API keys provided by the OpenAI, and we'll be using React.js and DaisyUI. So let's get started. First of all, we will be installing the React.js project inside our folder. So I'm heading towards the Visual Studio Code, open terminal, and we'll be installing React.js. I'm using Yarn, but you can also use npm. In the meanwhile, the packages are installing. We'll be generating a new API key to use inside our project. Make sure you do not deploy this API key in any kind of client-side software, or the OpenAI will automatically replace the key. So you can create a new secret key using make sure to copy this API key, because once it is gone, you will not able to get this API key. I'm creating a new .env file, and I'll be placing this key and give it a name. So packages are now installed. Now we'll be installing DaisyUI. We also require the Tailwind initial file, so we'll copy code of that configuration from Tailwind site. Make sure to change this content attribute so that Tailwind is able to identify JavaScript file and make the compilation as required. Now we need to add DaisyUI as a plugin. So we'll be replacing this old plugin. And as you can see, we have a night mode inside our application. So we'll be changing the theme attribute inside our DaisyUI. And to do that, we'll require to add DaisyUI attribute and change the default theme array to simply night. We will need to add base component and utilities from Tailwind in order to get styles from Tailwind. We'll also require post CSS config file as we are using create React app. Okay, we already have added Tailwind CSS and auto prefixer. This file is generated using npx Tailwind CSS init command, so we do not have to do it manually. So we'll run the project and see if everything is placed. And in the meantime, I'll copy paste two images we will use inside the project. So these are the two images. Just simply copy and place it in public folder. And we will remove the unnecessary files and images. We don't require this. and we will also refactor our index.html. We don't require this. Let's remove all the code which is not required. I'm also removing this comment because we don't want that comment, because that is not helping us in any way. So let's go to app.js and create an empty div. Something is already running on port 3000. Okay, let's change the port. So now let's go to the OpenAI documentation, API reference, and inside that we will go into authentication. So we will need to install OpenAI. So let's install that. So this package provides us with configuration at OpenAI, which we'll be using to place our key and use the API which is provided by the OpenAI. First of all, let's import use state because we'll require that. And okay, so inside model, let's import OpenAI and also copy this code. Now replace this API key with the API key which we have written in our env file. Make sure to save all files, and we do not need the response at this point of time. Now we have an OpenAI variable which we'll be using to fetch API and get response from the Chat GPT. So let's start coding inside the app function. First of all, let's create the state variable for storing our messages array. Let's write some default content inside it. So the content is the response and the role is assistance. Whenever the role is assistant, it means it is generated by the Chat GPT, and whenever the role is user, that means it is a question or something written by the user. So this is the default array which we'll be using, and let's create another use state for status indicator of typing. Now let's copy some chat application code from DaisyUI. Okay. So now let's change the image path and create the proper styling for this. Also, let's rerun the project because the current theme shows the light version, but we have changed variables, so not a font wrong inside that. So any error? Why? Okay, so we have some mistakes in the typo. Here it is not theme, it is themes. Make sure to have a correct typo, and that is the reason why we were showing the light version of the application. Okay, now it's good. So now let's go to the app.js file and make the necessary markup changes for styling. Let's change this section and add some class. Also give some padding, and let's create it as a fixed position with the full height of the screen. Inside that we'll be using mockup of MacBook. Okay, let's copy its code and place it over here, and let's modify it to be full width and full height of the parent, and also give it flex column. Now let's remove this div, we don't want that, and copy this code like this, and let's see. Okay, so this is the chat start, that means the AI, and this is the chat end, that is the Anakin, which is the user. So let's remove the attributes which we don't require, like we don't want chat header, we don't want footer, and that goes same with the user as well. Remove header and remove footer. Cool. So the only change between the messages typed by the AI and the user is the class, that is chat start and chat end. So let's use our messages variable and filter that, and let's wrap all of them inside a div and give a bit of padding. So inside this, let's create a condition. If the length of messages array is greater than 0, then we will show this div. This is our the official message, and this is the index. So we want to return the div based on the items we have in the array. Okay. Let's pass the key attribute as I, and we want the class to be dynamic. So we have a chat, that is a common class name. So, and we want to have a different class name based on the role. If it is assistant, we want different class name, and if it's user, we want different class name. So let's create a condition for that. So if msg.role is equal to assistant, then we want chat start class name to be added. Else we want chat name. That's it. Now let's copy the code for the avatar and also give a similar condition to that to change the source of the image. Okay, and then we have the message. So we'll be just printing that bubble. Inside that we'll be giving content. Let's remove this. So as well as this code. Okay, so these are the two default objects in our array, which is looped inside our return method. So whatever we have on the left side is generated by the AI, and whatever on the right side, it is generated by the user or whatever the question user has typed. So now let's create an input field where user can actually ask a question. So we will create a form and give class name, create on submit event. Let's create this function. So we'll be creating our apps logic inside this function. Let's prevent default form event, so browser is not reloaded. Thereafter, let's create a span where it will check if the AI is typing, it will show it, and if it is not, it won't show it. Let's by default give it true, so you can see how it will look. It's typing and then oh, let's like that. Okay, so it's not saying because of the color or maybe the sad index. Oh, because of the top and right. Okay, let's refresh it and create structure for our input element and submit button. It's just a placeholder and we will give some class name. These all classes are provided by the DaisyUI, which is amazing by the way. And we will add required attribute to make sure user is not submitting a blank input. Next, we'll create a submit button. Make sure to give type submit, and we'll be using an SVG. I'm copying code from my source code. Also, I have given a link to the source code in the description. Make sure you check the GitHub. Okay, now let's grab this whole inside input group to make sure everything is grouped. Oops, okay, we don't want it. Okay. So this is how it will look. User will enter their questions over here, then hit submit, and then we'll be fetching an API, and we will get response from the API, and we will need to display it over here. So let's first of all let's change back to this variable to false, so it is hidden by default, and we will enable it once we fetch the API. So let's now move to the logic part of the code. Styling is done. So all the logic will go inside handle.submit, which is an async function, because we'll wait for response which is provided by OpenAI. So we are using async function. First of all, let's create a new object for the new message, and we will give the value of a question which is written by the user, and make sure to give role as a user as these questions are being used by the user. Now let's append this question to our messages array. Let's create another variable messages and a blank array, and we will restructure our original messages array and append our new message. Thereafter, we will set message and we'll pass new messages array inside the set messages so that our use state variable is updated. And at this point of time, we will set typing as true, and also we will reset the form so that input field is blank. Now let's create code for fetching the API of OpenAI. So I'm creating a new variable to capture response. Okay. So await OpenAI. Now this is coming from this variable which we have copied from the OpenAI website. So let's copy OpenAI, and we have a method create at completion. Inside that we'll pass attributes, and these are mandatory attributes. First one is the model, and we'll be using GPT 3.5 turbo model, and another required is pause messages. Now we will pass our new messages variable, and after this fetch we also update our use state with the response generated by the AI. So for that we will use set messages, destructure our old messages array, and append the new response which is provided by the AI. So we'll also console log so we can see how exactly AI gives the response, and we will set typing to false because AI has already provided the response. Now we do not want services typing to show in the UI screen. So that's it. Now let's test it if it is working or not. So let's ask a question. Who is anything? Despite the fact we already know this guy, famous guy. Okay, so this is the console log which we received from the OpenAI Chat GPT. So it provides the array of choices, and inside this, the first item includes our message, which includes content and role. So as you can see, assistant as a role, that means this response is generated by the Chat GPT, and whatever the response or information is stored inside the content attribute. So this is what we did. We have appended the response from the AI inside our useState method. So that is why useState is updated, and the moment useState is updated, it goes inside this return function and also update this logic. And that is the reason we are able to see response from the AI in the UI. So you can ask any question from mathematics to science, any questions. Let's ask some mathematics. Log is 4 into 0. The result of 4 multiplied by 0 is 0. Yeah, we know it. So let's ask another question. Who is Iron Man? Okay, we know that. So let's ask who is Jarvis? Who is Jarvis? Mm-hmm. So Jarvis is an AI created by the Iron Man. Okay, and pretty much that's it. This is our coding to integrate ChatGPT inside React. So there is only one bug that I found. So instead of type button, we have to use submit in order to make sure whenever user hits this button, the form gets submitted. Okay. This is also responsive. I mean, you can also check it inside your mobile version. Okay. So pretty much that's it. Thank you for watching the video.